cucumbers on the eyeballs.
I'm sure there's a little counseling involved too, and it might be too. I assume that he wasn't allowed to drink in there. That might have been part of it. Is that he might have been getting all of his calories through booze.
Yeah.
And so he didn't feel all that hungry.
Yeah.
You know?
I know plenty of people who have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was apparently not the first time he had been to a health farm. This was his third trip, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd been there for a number of times, or a number of trips.
Actually, the band was actually remarkably accommodating. They really were good friends to Richie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
They were. I think they actually did.
They cared.
Where a lot of bands I think would have kicked him to the curb after the second trip to the health farm. And because he missed a lot of shows and stuff.
He did, and as we were talking about it, he misses a whole bunch through this year.
The good news is his guitar was never really plugged in to begin with.
Yeah. Good point.
It's okay.
So they really were just losing him on vocals.
Yeah, which, I mean, fair enough, right? That's a significant loss, but...
True.
That's kind of important.
So let's step forward in time. We're going to go to July of 1994. Richie disappears. He disappears for 2 days, and when he comes back, he's sent for rehab at Priory Hospital for a total term of 10 weeks because it was believed that he was drinking the entire time. So he was drunk the whole time, and at the same time, he was self-harming. So he was cutting himself, and his form of cutting himself hurting himself was not only to take a knife to his forearms or other parts of his body, he was also putting cigarettes out on himself. So he was covered in these self-inflicted wounds. That's why the band said, whoa, we need to go probably something a little more serious than just the health farm.
You may be able to help me with this or not. When he was doing his self-harm cutting thing, oftentimes there's self-harm and there's attempted suicide. And they are two different things, and so he was self-harming. He wasn't trying to kill himself.
Yes,
maybe he was.
It was. I think it was.
He was doing the cutting.
It was a half-assed attempt at taking his own life, is what it's believed, because the self-harm is not on the wrist. You could see he had cuts from, say, the elbow down, where he was just cutting himself.
I would strongly say that's not a half-assed attempt at killing yourself.
Probably not.
It's a self-harm.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but these things escalate, and so they knew he was troubled. He had issues, and so they sent him someplace to get help.
Yeah, he himself said that cutting himself was just a way of taking his focus off things that were troubling him.
Mm-hmm.
But now all of a sudden you got something bigger to worry about. You got a little pain from this cut you just inflicted on yourself. So you're not going to be thinking so much about this other stuff, and so it's a nice distraction.
And I admittedly do not understand that rationale and logic. I feel for people who take that as a way, or experience that as a way to cope with other things. I don't get it. And if you do that, please seek help.
Yeah.
Because
I can tell you
it escalates, and it's not a good not a good habit.
From personal experience, Devin's little corner here, is that for me it was always that's what you felt like you deserved. Is you just deserve to be in pain. You don't deserve to be happy. You don't deserve to have your life going well. And oftentimes I think if I would extrapolate that out, if things were starting to go well for him with the band and they were, gaining influence and all of that stuff, but he had this deeply troubled soul of you don't deserve that happiness, then that really can explain some of that escalation. It
could have made it even worse.
It would make it worse, because you would just continue to say I don't deserve this. There's no, and I deserve to be in pain. I deserve to be miserable. I don't deserve this amazing life that I found myself in. And that can be a really good mode of escalation there. So, but again, seek help.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, people that listen to our podcast are, by definition, very well balanced. Mentally
people
healthy
who really like to hear about murders and disappearances and robberies.
Exactly.
Those are all
by definition.
Exactly. You are the definition of normal if you're listening to us.
So they sent Richie to rehab, basically, right?
They did.
And an inpatient rehab facility.
Correct.
Yeah.
And because he is there, he misses a lot of things. He misses the release of the Holy Bible on the 30th of August, 1994, which is
the creative baby.
Yes. He also misses quite a few shows. He is able to eventually rejoin the band for some of their shows in the UK, and then they go on a European tour. They are the opening act for another band called Suede. Everything seems good for the band, I should say, because for Richie, things are continuing to things are devolving for him and degrading.
Well, and I can imagine that's also, like a tour situation is an enabling situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're prone to drug abuse or alcohol abuse, any kind of excess, and then, maybe that drug usage or that alcohol usage leads to your spiral of self-harm. Like, it's a hard environment to be in, I'm sure.
Although, you'd think that he was doing enough self-harm just with all the boozing. You'd think that would have been enough. I mean, those hangovers, that's got to hurt just about as bad as, a bunch of cuts in your arm.
That's a slippery slope, sir.
I know.
And it's a vicious circle. And we talked about before that the band really was supportive of him to do whatever he needed to do to make himself, as they would say, better. I've got a quote here from Nicky Wire, who he is one of the band members, and he told in an interview, this was after Richie's disappearance, he said, "We told Richie he could do whatever he wanted, just write, just come to the studio, just tour, just whatever he needed to do to feel better, but he still wanted to be in the band 100%. End quote. So, whereas they said, take it easy, do what you want, ease into things, he dove right back in all the way. He didn't ease in or work it in at all. And that couldn't have helped. While they were on tour, and this is for their European tour, this is in November.
94?
Yeah, 1994. I'm sorry, I paused because I just was suddenly thinking about this as I'm reading it, is Richie somehow gets a hold of a butcher's knife. And the band finds him with that knife, and he tells them what his plan is, which is his plan is to take the butcher's knife and cut his fingers off so that he does not have to be on stage anymore pretending to play. Because he knows well that he is unplugged during every show. And I can only imagine what that would feel like to be up there in front of screaming crowds miming the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
I can see how that would take a toll on.
I would have said a better approach would have been to take guitar lessons rather than cut your fingers off. That's how I would have approached it, but I think a little differently.
Yep, it's a mode of approach for it. Now, obviously, the band found him. They stopped him. He did not go through with cutting his fingers off. He did, however, continue to self-harm or self-mutilate. After a show in Amsterdam on the 24th of November, Richie cut himself vertically down his chest, which, according to the reporting, required 36 stitches to put back together. Which that's a decent-sized cut.
Left a nice scar, I bet.
36, it's not nothing.
No.
But as far as like a chest wound goes, it could.
But it's got to be deep enough to require stitches. And... if I cut myself with a knife, accidentally flick myself with a razor blade, I'm probably not going to get stitches, but it's got to be deep enough. You got to go through many layers of skin for him to want to do that.
All right, that's fair.
So, The point is he does this. They are still on tour, and on the 1st of December, Nicky goes outside of their hotel in Hamburg, Germany, and finds Richie with his face covered in blood, because he's been banging his head against the side of the building. At that point, the band knew there was trouble. They canceled the rest of the tour.
They did what really excellent friends would have done.
Yes, and they all went home and they took him home.
I think about this case, and I think about like Kurt Cobain, and I think about how it makes me sad a little bit, because I think if Kurt Cobain had the kind of like really serious support system that Richie had, like he probably, he may not have, but I think he would have been in a better situation. So, that's always interesting to me.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a number of, that's the hard part with fame and situations like that, is it's a lot of people after.
Yeah. Well, it's
and
hard
so they lose touch with all those other things and all those other people.
The Manic Street Preachers walked away from a ton of money when they walked away from the rest of their tour. I mean, they forfeit that. They may have even been liable for some of the expenses incurred. And they did that because they thought, this is our friend and he needs help.
Although I'd imagine
walk away from it.
I would imagine at the same time, their tempers were getting a little shorter with every one of these incidents. They're probably
maybe, but they could have just said, okay, you're out.
And they didn't do that. No, but they were probably
at
least getting somewhat exasperated.
Sure.
With it. They were supportive, but at the same time, they were probably going, Richie, you're killing us here.
Like, frankly, if it were like you guys, I would just be like, you guys are going to lose me a ton of money, so like, you just go home. I'm going to stay
you're
here.
Gone.
Yeah.
I'm kicking you to the curb.
I mean, like, that's a typical human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's really admirable the way that they try to take care of him.
Yeah, I mean, they could have gone the way of, was it GNR and Axl? Guns N' Roses and Axl Rose. I mean, Axl Rose was notorious for getting drunk and showing up late and being a total prima donna until eventually, am I wrong, and do either of you remember this, until eventually they kicked him to the curb?
Before my time.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So you're not allowed to listen to it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been so long since I've read it, I just remember him doing stuff like that. But that's not important to our story here.
So they took him home.
To take him home.
That's great.
Everything for the remainder of the month of December seems good. Everything for the month of January of 1995 seems good. And by that, I mean that his friends and family and mates all say that nothing seems wrong. He's relaxing. He's seeing people. He doesn't seem to be, his behavior isn't that he's continuing to get completely blasted drunk and then harm himself. Like, maybe he's relaxing. He's
on the road to recovery.
He's on the road to recovery. Exactly. Mm-hmm. The timing on this next bit might have been a little bit too soon, but Richie and James Bradfield, who is another member of the band.
Oh, the band's still around, by the way.
Oh, yeah. No, they're still putting out albums.
Yeah.
They're still, actually, what's really I find admirable is it's still the original three guys. Richie came on. What happens with Richie happens. And those three stuck together. They've not brought on anybody since that I can tell. So it's been the same guys the whole time.
And I think I've heard, too, that they give a quarter of their money to Richie's family. In other words, the royalties are divided up 4 ways, and Richie's share goes to his family.
That's great.
They're
like really good humans.
They are.
Yeah, they are.
And I don't know if they're still doing that, Joe. I know that
they did it at least for a while.
Up until the time that he was declared legally dead, they were still depositing his portion of everything in an account for him in holding.
Yeah, but
that's a significant amount of money.
It's a lot of money.
Oh,
yeah. No. many, many years of money. So, yes. So, like I was saying, though, is James Bradfield and they're supposed to go on a promotional tour in America. And Richie had been on the phone with his mom, and he had said that he wasn't too excited about the tour, and he didn't really want to go, or the promotional tour, but he didn't really want to go, but he's going to do it because he had to kind of approach, which we've all had conversations like that. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
The pair check into the Embassy Hotel on the 31st of January.
Sorry, James and Richie?
And Richie, yes.
Okay. Not Richie and his mom.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. They are supposed to leave the next day, which is February 1st, but instead on the 1st, Richie checks out of his room and then makes the several-hour drive from London to Cardiff. And I am pretty sure that there's obviously a bunch of embassy hotels all over England, but I'm pretty sure that they would have been flying out of Heathrow.
Oh, so they were staying at like the embassy at the airport.
Right, or close by. Right.
Okay, got it.
Baywater or something like that, or I can't remember now.
That's fine. I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah,
we probably don't need to know exactly where, but it was London.
It was London.
Yeah, it was in the London area. So he makes the several-hour drive from there back to his flat in Cardiff. When he left, he took his wallet and his passport and his car keys. I think they said that he left behind, I can't remember if he took or left behind some Prozac, and he also took with him 2,800 pounds, which he had been slowly collecting, theoretically in preparation for this trip to America. He was going to the ATM and getting 200 pounds a day, because that was his limit. But theoretically, he was taking it, or he's getting it all in prep for the trip. He's going to convert it to U.S. dollars.
Right.
A little walking around money, not a bad idea.
Yeah. Bradfield, I mean, he had no choice. He had to go. So he got on the plane and he went to America, and he said he hoped that Richie would just, come to his senses and show up in a couple of days.
Sounds like Richie kind of did that sometimes.
He was a bit flighty at times.
He'd just wander off and then be like, oh, here I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the next day, which would be the 2nd of February, the Manic Street Preachers manager files a missing persons report. From that point on, things get a heck of a lot harder to track. They're not nearly as exact as a lot of what we've talked about so far. After the 2nd, supposedly Richie was spotted in the passport office in Newport, which is in Wales. It's east of Cardiff. It looks like it's about an hour or so's drive maybe away. But he's supposedly spotted there. He's also said to have been spotted by a fan at the Newport bus station. And then, so those are 2 fan sightings, or regular sightings. And there's also, there's a taxi driver that pops up in this. And we're going to talk about him now and again later. But the short version of the taxi driver is that on the 7th of February, he says he picked up a man who he believed was Richie from the King's Hotel in Newport, and then drove him around the area for what sounds like at least an hour. And people say that he was probably taking, if it was Richie, taking him to see his old haunts and neighborhoods and stuff like that, before the driver eventually dropped him off at the Severn service station, at which point the passenger pays the £68 fare in cash. Now, I find some issues with that destination, but we're going to talk about that in theories, so we're going to hold off on the cab driver portion till then.
Okay, and by the way, the Severn service station is a rest area, correct?
And we're going to go into some more detail on that as well, because it plays into some of the local things that are around in the area where the last believed sightings are. Actually, we're going to talk about it right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, Richie's Vauxhall Cavalier, it arrived at that same service station, the Severn service station, on the 14th of February.
And the Vauxhall Cavalier is a car.
It is a car. It was reported as abandoned on the 17th of February. By the way, there's a several hour parking limit at this station, which is why after 3 days they consider it abandoned. And then it was collected by the police. They took it. They towed it.
Sorry, I just looked up what a Vauxhall Cavalier looks like, thinking oh, this is going to be some super cool car. No, it's like a crappy little
like a
station
Saturn
wagon thing.
Yeah, it's not a fancy car. No, not at all.
It's like what you drive in high school.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
It's okay. No, it's okay. Okay, let's explain, because Joe actually had started on this route and then I shut him down much too quickly, and I apologize for that. We're going to talk about what the Severn service station is, because here in the U.S. we're all used to rest stops which have hopefully working restrooms at them.
If you're lucky.
And if you're also lucky, they might have vending machines for snacks and drinks, and those may or may not exist or may not work.
I don't know, the ones in the Midwest are pretty nice. Sometimes they even have I don't remember what they even call them. They call them sky ramps or something like that, and you exit and you park, and it's a couple of restaurants and a service station and blah blah blah.
See, I've never seen that
they're
before,
above, they're an overpass kind of situation.
Okay,
that's super cool, but they're few and far between.
Okay,
in Oregon it's exactly what you just described.
The places that I've lived and traveled to around the country, I've always just seen the basics.
The majority
You're
of them
lucky
are like
if there is somebody selling coffee for donations, kind of place.
We call that crack coffee.
Although I do have to say though that when you got to pee, those things are wonderful.
Oh yeah,
especially as a woman.
I am happy to stop and deal with the skeezy guy with the sign.
I'm not going to complain too much. Yeah.
Okay.
But so in the UK, they're maybe not like that.
They're not like that, because I've been to them. So what they are instead is much like you talked about in the Midwest, where there will be a restaurant or 2 or 3, sometimes in the same building, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's even a shop or 2 selling tchotchke from the local area. Look at the such and such, and get it on a key ring.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things, and it's likely to be populated by, if nobody else, some lorry drivers and the employees at the location. So it's not a
not
desert like we're used to.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the reason that they're kind of well monitored. Typically, I know they're not all. I read some of the reviews of different stations that I get that they are not all the same. But there's going to be people there, and that's why they are really able to do a good job of monitoring cars when they're there, because people are coming in and out, and they want to make sure that nobody's squatting or camping at that location, because that's rarely allowed.
Oh, well, never allowed. Hopefully.
I don't know that. I don't know what every one of them is like, but that's okay. This particular station, though, the Severn Service Station, is next to, properly named, the Severn Bridge, which crosses, can you guess?
The Severn River.
Well,
the Severn Gulch.
Yeah.
The Severn Valley
Severn Canyon.
of Canyon
It is
Doom?
River Severn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Severn in Welsh means Valley of Death.
Oh.
Yeah.
I forgot in England it's River Severn, it's not the Severn River. It's opposite.
Yeah.
Everything has to be a little different
They got to
there.
do everything weird over
Queen's
there.
English. I actually brag to people all the time. I'm like, did you know that I am completely fluent in reading the Queen's English? And they always look at me like they don't understand the joke.
Do you have to read it in her voice though too?
I do.
Oh, you do.
Okay, we are way off track.
I can't tell which one of you sounds more like the Queen.
I know it's tough.
Steve.
We're really good at it, but we're way off top here. So here,
There's a bridge right there.
Yes. So the point is, River Severn flows. It eventually flows into the Bristol Channel, which eventually flows into the ocean, because England it's an island.
What?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the rivers all kind of go into the ocean.
They all kind of do. Well, they're all pretty close to the
I don't know if you
ocean.
know this or not, but almost every single river goes into the ocean.
They kind of do.
Eventually,
They
they
either
do.
go
You're
into
right.
the ocean or they go into another river.
It's true. Which
Yeah.
goes into the ocean.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Severn Bridge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
It's a suspension bridge.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big one, actually. It's got.
I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool looking, and it's a suspension bridge, and it goes from the Bristol side to the Newport side, and Newport is on the northwest side of the bridge, and I believe southeast is the Bristol side, and the service station itself is on the southeast end of the bridge. Mm-hmm. There's a park on the other end, which, according to some of the stuff that I've seen on the internet, looks pretty nice, but what's important to understand about this is that, and this will play into our theories, is there is something about this particular suspension bridge, as there is with many tall bridges. It attracts people who are wanting to take their own lives.
Well, it's probably because there's a really nice parking area at the southeast end of the bridge.
Yeah, if they would just move that thing.
Uh-huh.
No, well, I mean, you think about it, the deck. Water. That's a 150-foot drop, or 47 meters. That's a long ways down. Mm-hmm. Pretty good chance you're not going to survive that. So that's very attractive to someone whose intent is not to survive it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I still say it's the parking.
So like I said, they collected his vehicle on the 17th of February.
Yeah, and that's it.
And that's it. From no point forward on was any sign of Richie concretely found. No body. When they found his car, they could tell that it had been lived in for at least several days with burger wrappers and stuff like that. And
not necessarily, not even necessarily by Richie.
Food
by
wrappers.
The way. Yeah,
food wrappers. It could have been from anybody.
Fast food wrappers. Yeah, anybody could have moved into his car.
The thing that makes people think that probably didn't happen, though, Joe, is that there were photos of his family in there, strewn about in the car, which leads people to think that he must have been hanging out, sleeping in his car, and looking at family, reminiscing. But we don't know that for sure. Over the years, just like with Elvis and any other famous person, there are sightings. There have been sightings of Richie, and he is very well traveled according to the sightings. He's been in the Canary Islands. He's been in Goa, India. He was apparently sighted at the library in Newport, which is just a couple of miles away from where he disappeared.
Sure.
Several years later. So he's all over the map.
Yeah,
but
Goa seems to be the go-to spot for sighting people who disappeared. I know. But seriously, God, who else am I thinking of? It seems like I've heard of a couple of other people who disappeared and were also spotted in none other than Goa, India. Yeah, it seems to be the place to go.
It does appear to be a popular destination for the disappeared.
Yeah, it does.
So it's almost time to go into theories. But before we do that, we should probably take a quick break and listen to Richie's last album. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in about 56 minutes.
Perfect.
I cried because I had no shoes. And then I met a man who had no feet. And I said, hey, dude, give me your shoes and socks. You're not using them. Well, I got to tell you, that really improved things a lot, especially the socks, because it turns out the socks were not just your ordinary socks. They were Bombas, which you probably heard of if you're on the internet, especially if you listen to podcasts. Bombas, that's spelled bomb-ass. Bombas are the creation of Randy Goldberg and David Heath, who about 4 years ago decided they were going to redesign the sock, and they did. They really rethought them well, and frankly, I'm wearing a pair right now, and I truly am. And they're really good. I've been wearing them all day, and they don't feel nearly as bad as socks typically do by 12 hours of my feet in them. They have premium socks. They have 7 substantial improvements to the ordinary sock. And for every pair that they sell, this is a nice selling point, they donate a pair to those in need. They've already donated over 2 million pairs of socks so far. So that's a pretty cool thing. So if you need new socks, I don't think you can go wrong with Bombas. So go to bombas.com/sideways now, and you can get 20% off your first order. You'll love the socks, or you get your money back. That's guaranteed. That's bombas.com. That's bombas.com/sideways.
And we're back. And I kind of like that album.
Not bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter that he couldn't play guitar.
Yeah, it's got some good beats.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good rhythm.
No, I mean, you ever see Bono playing the guitar?
Yeah, and he has those stupid glasses.
Yeah, I don't think Bono can see the guitar.
So, theories?
Okay, so we're in theories. We're going to start out with the most prominent theory out there, which is suicide. So from and there's some back history to why this theory is such a favorite. From what I've read, Wales was not exactly a prospering place in the 80s, and growing up there really wasn't all that awesome because at 80s into the 90s, because if you remember back, there's Margaret Thatcher, and she did some things where she reorganized industry, specifically coal mines, and that really closed down the economy to a lot of people, and it had some pretty negative impacts for a lot of blue-collar workers. And so there was a lot of families who were, shortage on food, shortage on money, unemployment for years on end. Like, it didn't do good things. And Wales was not one of those places that got off scot-free. It went through it just like everybody else.
Well, they were scot-free. If you wanted Scotch, you went to Scotland. And I'll say, I spent a little time in Wales, and it's a beautiful little country. I like Wales a lot. But the country is made of slate, which means that most of the houses and buildings are also made of gray slate, which is very picturesque on a sunny day, but on a cloudy, rainy day, it can be kind of just a little bit gray.
And they have so many of them.
Oh, they have a lot of them, yeah. But, yeah. I mean, even then, there's a certain beauty to it, but it's definitely more depressing than a sunny day in Wales.
Oh,
yeah.
For sure.
No, I mean, we live in a town where it's cloudy and rainy for months and months on end. I get it.
But imagine living in this same town and all the buildings and houses are gray.
Yeah.
It gets really...
Yeah. No, that's a very good point.
And by the way, Wales, don't be upset. I still like your country a lot.
Yeah. It's very picturesque.
Yeah.
Now, like a lot of creatives, Richie was able to take the things that he went through in his life and turn them into his music. I mean, that's something that he drew upon to make his lyrics. So there's a positive in this negative. He's not the only one that did it from the coal strike stuff. So for anybody who knows Chumbawamba, they had their hit Tub Thumping, and that is also based on what happened in the coal industry.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. Piss in the night. That was like my favorite. That was one of the first albums I ever bought. I love that album.
That is a fun little song.
That song is fun. The rest of the album, really good.
Yeah.
I know.
I actually,
it's
what's
dumb.
funny is that when I was doing my research, I turned that on when I came across this bit, which I'd known for a while. I was like, oh yeah, I should listen to it. Well, I'll just keep reading this, and I found it was impossible to do while it was playing.
Yeah,
no,
you gotta sing along.
Well, no, I just had to pause it.
Okay, that works too.
I did that instead because I was in the office.
I gotta listen to that song. It's been too long since I've heard that.
I will serenade you later.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
We'll pull it up on whatever website we need to. So the thing is, like we talked about before, so there's that, and then Richie, he had been experiencing depression for many years, and he was very open about it. He didn't hide it away, and I to a degree, I believe that might be one of the things that drew some people to him, is he was open about it. He talked openly about, I'm going through this thing, and this is what it is, and I'm going to deal with it.
And he was
which is
taking some
admirable.
Prozac, right?